For those that are on Facebook, those that are on live, YouTube, and other means, welcome to part 2 of Judaism and the Supernatural. Well, last week we discussed angels, so it's only befitting that this week we discuss the opposite of angels, which would be devils, demons, Satan, ghosts, all types of these beautiful creations. Do we believe in them? And what would be the Jewish view on some of those things? Well, it's interesting. People have done research, and 67% of Americans believe that demons exist. Now, me personally, my theory is, I have a theory behind this. Why do 67%? That's a pretty high number. And I think there's a correlation with that, with the high divorce rate. So something tells me there's some kind of connection between the two. But what does Judaism say regarding demons and forces? So the first thing is that there are more forces in this world, negative forces, than there are human beings. That's the first thing that the Talmud says, that there are numerous forces. They're all over the place. What is their purpose? What do they do? So there's different terms how we describe demons in the Talmud. Some people call it a bad spirit. So today, for example, if somebody is suffering from depression or manic depressive or bipolar, or any of these types of things that make them happy, sad, you don't say, oh, he's possessed by a demon. Today there's terminology for it. But it seems in the Bible and in the Talmud, people would describe that as being grabbed by a bad spirit. And maybe that's just out of lack of a medical term for that, but definitely we believe that there are bad spirits. Plagues. Instead of saying that plagues are spread by bacteria or whatever, germs or whatever things, they would say, oh, the demons are spreading that. It's interesting, just as angels are mentioned explicitly in the Bible, in the 5 books of Moses, I'm not even talking about in the other parts, just in the 5 books of Moses, we spoke about that last week. Demons are mentioned explicitly in the Torah. Now, one place is, it says in the book in Deuteronomy, towards the end, I think it's chapter 32, there's a song. It's called Hazino. And I pointed out in Shul, usually songs are very happy, right? You don't, they are depressing songs, but for the most part, if you're singing, it means you're happy. Here there's a song, and the song is a musar. It's a rebuke to the Jewish people. So how do we call a song a rebuke? Why would that be in a song form? So the sages tell us that this is to bring out Moses' love for the Jewish people, that even when he rebukes them, he does it in a song. So among his rebuke is that they offered offerings to Shadim. Shadim are to demons. Now, to be fair, there are certain commentaries that say it doesn't mean that demons exist. What it means is he's trying to express that your offerings to nothingness. So just like you'd say, oh, let the demon grab you or something. It doesn't mean that I believe in demons. It just means that it's, I'm cursing you or whatever. So Moses is criticizing them for offering to demons, meaning to forces that are not good, not to God, not to holiness. But it doesn't mean that demons exist. So there are opinions like that. It's not the majority of opinions that say that. There's other expressions the Talmud says that are found in Job and other places that are references to demons. The Talmud, when discusses if demons exist, tells us a very disturbing story. Very disturbing, very well-known but disturbing story, that there was once, when King Solomon needed to build a temple, first give to the part that's not so disturbing, he needed to cut the stones. The law is that a stone that is cut by metal is not kosher for the altar. So what did he do? He took a worm, it says. He had to get a worm that had a very sharp way of cutting, and this was not done with metal. Today, when people look at that, they say, oh, maybe that was a hint, or it's alluding to laser technology. So they don't take it literally, or they take it literally and figuratively, that it's the concept of a laser, whatever you want to talk about. How did he get this worm? So he recruited the head of the demons, whose name was Ashmedai. And he got him this. It's a whole way how he tricked him. Anyway, the end of the story was that Ashmedai actually kicked out King Solomon, and he disguised himself as King Solomon. When King Solomon came, they didn't believe him until there was a whole upheaval, until finally King Solomon was able to regain his throne. Now, stories in the Talmud, especially of this nature when they invoke people, are true. In other words, we don't believe that they're parables or analogies or wishful thinking. It actually, this story happened. Now, to understand it is a very challenging. How does a king get off his throne by devils and demons? How do you do that? But that's a different discussion. But definitely, the Talmud believes in demons. It's interesting. The Talmud says demons look like humans, meaning, of course, spiritually, it's not a physical thing. They have wings, which is maybe why people say that angels have wings, demons have wings, and their feet that do not resemble human. They're feet of a bird. And what happened was, one of the ways that King Solomon got his throne back is he exposed the feet of Ashmedai. Now, there's something interesting. I actually looked into it. Apparently, and this always makes for good intrigue, Hitler never took off his shoes. And that's not just, there's something to that he was very careful not to take off his shoes. Now, Hitler was born to a mother, or to something, I don't know, it gave birth to such a monster, but you can be possessed by a demon. So, I don't know, and I wouldn't be shocked. I'm not saying it is or it isn't. It could be a human demon, whatever he was definitely a devil and a very evil person, regardless if his feet look like a demon or not. But just something interesting to point out. Okay, so what in the book of Isaiah, it mentions the names for demons are generally called shadim, a shed, which is a demon. They have also called mazikim in the Talmud. Mazikim means forces that cause damage. Now, the most famous of all demons is Lilith. Did Lilith exist? What is it? What isn't it? And like many things, it's very vague. It seems that Lilith did exist. It seems from Kabbalistic teachings that she actually tried to marry Adam. And afterwards, she didn't succeed. Adam didn't want her, wanted Eve. And because of that, she is now the forces of temptation, Lilith. She's a demon that tempts us. So, and if that's the case, she must be a very powerful demon. Another well-known demon is the angel of death. That is a very famous demon. Now, we said last week that angels are messengers of God, right? They do things for God. So what are demons? Well, they're also, to a certain extent, angels. They're forces, and they're messengers of God. The most famous of them is the angel of death. That is God's messenger to take away life from a person. The Talmud discusses about King David, that he was supposed to die at the age of 70, and he knew he was going to die on the Sabbath. So it says that if you're studying Torah, the angel of death does not have power over you. So King David studied Torah the whole time, and the angel of death made a wind blow, and King David went to investigate. He went outside, he tripped, and at that moment he stopped learning and he passed away outdoors on the Sabbath. Now, this doesn't work with us, because even if we're studying, our mind wanders at this and that. So I've never seen somebody, well, I'm going to study till I die. It doesn't, but for King David it would work. But there is an angel of death, that's God's messenger to do it. So there are the different demons that the Talmud mentions. Says an interesting thing. Last week was the Torah portion of Noah. Noah saved all living beings. He also took demons into the ark with him. I guess there had certain purposes for that. And it is mentioned in Kabbalistic teachings by the sages that there are people that actually become demons. That people could become demons. I won't comment on that. I'll just leave it at that. Now, how do you encounter demons? If you want to, so today they're not as prevalent as they were. Today demons are not around in the same consistency, and the proof is that there's many, many interesting things the Talmud says not to do because of demons. For example, do not walk alone at night. Demons like solitude. They don't like groups. So if you're with a group, they're not going to attack you. So when you walk at night, they like night. So alone at night is a perfect scenario for a demon to be able to attack you. So today it doesn't really apply. But a person shouldn't tempt themselves. There are things that we do to avoid bad spirits. In Judaism, we do not keep a book opened. So let's say you have a book in front of you, and then you want to go watch the game, and then you'll go back to studying. You have to close the book. Why? Because there's a demon that will come and make you forget. Now, what's behind that? A very simple thing. It's not respectful to just leave a book open, a holy book. You know, if you're reading Tom Sawyer or some novel or something, that's different. But if you're reading a book of holiness and you're leaving it open, it's not respectful. It's like because books are holy. So you just left it open. So what happens? A demon will make you forget what you're reading. We're taught there are bad spirits if an onion is left overnight. That's peeled. Let me clarify that. It doesn't mean regular onion. Everybody has onions overnight. If you have the way it works, we're actually careful about that. Eggs that are peeled, a hard-boiled egg. Now, if it's made into egg salad, it doesn't apply. But if it's a hard-boiled egg and it's completely peeled, you try to avoid that. And if you have an onion, there's two parts to onion. There's one's like a little tail, and there's the other part is like the root of it. So when we cut an onion and we think that we're not going to finish it, we cut it with the part that the root is still there. That's okay. But if the part that's not, like just a plain piece of onion, it's not that way. Now, demons are considered by the sages as an intermediary between humans and angels. It doesn't mean they don't beseech for you, but they're a step lower than angels. Angels are holy. Humans are humans, and somewhere in between are demons. In Judaism, I'm sure many of us have heard about this, something called the evil eye. We say an ayin hara. You know, a lot of Jewish grandmothers used to go, oh, ayin hara, poo. They spit out that there shouldn't be an evil eye. That is because we do not tempt Satan. You do not do things that will attract attention and cause Satan to be able to come, or demons, and start being able to cause pain and harm. I've told the story before about this fellow, he got himself a beautiful Lamborghini, and he's so proud of it. All he could do is show off his Lamborghini, and he stands in front of his office with the Lamborghini, and he says, "What do you think of my wheels? Isn't this a beautiful Lamborghini? Isn't this an excellent Lamborghini?" And lo and behold, as he's sitting there and showing off, a car goes speeding by, smashes open the door, and smashes the car. And he starts screaming, "My Lamborghini, my Lamborghini, my Lamborghini," and he's crying. He's devastated. And a guy walks over to him and he says, "I've never seen a more materialistic person than you in my life. Here came the car, he has completely smashed your hand, but you don't care. All you care about is your Lamborghini." He says, "He smashed my hand?" "My Rolex, my Rolex, my Rolex." So a person should not do things to it. Now, it doesn't mean you can't drive a nice car, and it doesn't mean you can't wear a Kennelly suit, or Gucci shoes, or a Prada purse, I don't know, whatever other things people have. That's okay, but not to overly draw attention to it. I think, "Hey, what do you think of this Prada purse? You don't have one," or anything that's overly over the top. You try not to do that. And the same thing is when it comes with kids. You don't overly show off. Like say, "Oh, my kid is the best, my child is the best." That can invoke demons. These are things that you do not want that demons should be tempted.
Really?
Yes.
Do demons just attack, or are they like, would it be Yetzer Hara? Because you hear
No, so there's
Christians
different
talk
forms.
about
I got you. No, there's different forms of what demons do and how they act. In general, there are positive forces in this world and there's negative forces in this world. There are two different types of forces and they fight with each other, right? Within ourselves, we also have that. We want to do good. That is the side that is holy. That's within us. We also are tempted to do bad. There's forces that want us to do bad. But then there are things that are damage causing. So there are definitely things in this world that are not good, that cause harm. But within ourselves, there are forces. I don't know if we would call it the devil within us versus of a desire, perhaps. I don't think that we have demons in us, but we do have temptations. And what can happen is that sometimes demons or the Satan has permission to tempt us in certain things. So, for example, a person is walking, and the second they walk, they see something. An opportunity arises to steal. Someone that's struggling, or someone that's struggling with alcohol, and all of a sudden alcohol comes. And there's different vices that come from forces that are not positive in this world. We said that today there are less demons around. However, they have not disappeared. So if somebody comes and says, "Hey, you're Jewish. Do you believe in a haunted house? Do you believe that a house could be haunted? I'm Jewish. Do we believe in a haunted house?" And the answer would be yes, that a Jew would believe that a house is haunted. There is a concept in Judaism that a soul hovers in this world, that they don't completely depart always. So if somebody, let's say, got killed in a certain spot, and you say, "Well, I saw this person's ghost," Judaism will not say, "Oh, I'm a Jew, I don't believe in that." No, that's possible that that soul is hovering there. There's a proof to that, a very interesting proof. According to Judaism, animals are much more sensitive to demons than humans. That's why we find in the Bible that Bilam was riding on a donkey, and as he's riding on a donkey, the donkey stops. Bilam says, "What are you doing? Why aren't you going?" Well, the donkey saw things. When there was the tsunami in Indonesia a few years ago, the dogs all went berserk. They all went crazy. They were barking. They were this. People didn't know what was going on. They sensed the tsunami. The humans didn't. The animals did. And the same thing is with, I don't want to use the word ghost. I don't want to impose, wow, this is a very naive rabbi. But the reality is that there are ghosts and spirits, or whatever you want to call it, in the material world, right? Spirits in this world, that could be a ghost, that could be something. So if a person says there's what's the haunted house in Long Island? What was that movie called? There was a movie. Yeah, the Amityville horrors, whatever it is. You know, in Judaism, yes, a house could be haunted. I'm not going to say, oh, well, I'm Jewish, I'm a rabbi, bring it on. No. There is something to be concerned about. So we do believe in ghosts. Ghostbusters, not so much. But ghosts, yes. There can be a ghost. Now, again, I don't believe every single case of a ghost means that there is a ghost over there. A lot of times people like to imagine things. They say there's a ghost in the White House. And depending on your political party and what year, you would say there's demons in the White House, which I'm not going to get into. Whatever political thing, you know, you're Democrat, Republican, whatever. I'm not going to get into a political discussion. But people do say that there is ghosts in the White House, the ghost of Lincoln or other people. So,
can we communicate with them?
Oh.
Because people have seances. We're not supposed to have seances,
Okay,
right?
we're going to get to communication with figures. We're going to talk about that a little bit different. But Harry Houdini was one of my heroes. Eric Weiss, right? Harry Houdini, he did seances. There's no evidence. There are righteous people that will go to a grave of a tzaddik and come back and say that the person spoke to me. You know, I'll tell you an interesting story about our Rebbe. Our Rebbe had a brother-in-law, and the brother-in-law was older than him. And when the previous Grand Rebbe passed away, there was dispute who's going to take over the leadership. And they themselves didn't push themselves to be, but the question was who's going to be the leader. And eventually, the older brother-in-law conceded. They asked him, why did you concede? You know, you're older. He says, I'll tell you something. My brother-in-law goes to the grave of the previous Rebbe, the Rebbe. He comes back and he says, the Rebbe told me this, the Rebbe told me that, the Rebbe told me that. He says, he's not a liar. He says, they might not get along. He says, he's not a liar. I go there and nothing. And that's when so people do go to graves and feel things and do have visions, but to actively try to communicate with dead people, for the most part, especially an ordinary person, meaning someone that's not a tzaddik, it's not happening. I mean, it's mentioned in the Tanakh, King Saul tried to bring down Samuel, but that's considered a very, very rare thing. It doesn't really exist today. Now, I just want to bring something out, which is important, that, yes?
The important thing from that story, though, is that Samuel did come back.
No, he did bring in, well, according to most opinions, he did. Some people say it was an illusion.
Says that he did.
Yes.
But that means that he can, which means that there is something afterlife.
No, but you have to, so this is what I want to bring out. No, I want to bring out something. Today, demons are not so prevalent. Black magic is not so prevalent. Today, people cannot use certain things that are mentioned in the past. Today, we do not have them. The reason is we are not so spiritual. If you don't have a lot of holiness, you also don't have the counterbalance. And I'll give you an example. You know, if you read Jewish history, the people worshipped idols, right? They would go, they would worship stones, they would worship this, they would worship that. And you look at them, you say, you got to be nuts. You know, you have to be so primitive to worship foolishness. You know, it's so empty. And the answer is that they actually would get energy from worshiping these idols. It wasn't, you know, that you were talking about intellectuals, people that Jewish people are not dumb. How did they worship different things? Because they would actually get energy. Today you don't get energy for it. Why don't you get energy for it today? Because we're not spiritually high, so automatically the forces of impurity are also not prevalent because it equals out. So when the Jewish people in the world was much more spiritual, there was also more demons and more forces. Now, there is a documented story, a very fascinating story that happened around 300 years ago I think it was in Poland, that there was a house that was occupied by people that were not very good. And they used to engage in very terrible, crass, and low behavior. And subsequently, when they left, the place was teeming with forces. The doors would open, and they would hear screeches and all types of things. And there was a great rabbi who lived at that time, and he brought in 10 rabbis with Torah scrolls. And he did a sort of like, I don't know what it's called when you, an exorcist, and he exorcised the house from demons. It's a documented story, but again, I wouldn't go to, I don't know, whatever places today, whichever hotels are considered haunted, and start bringing Torah scrolls and try to exort it. All right. We spoke a little bit about ghosts. There's a guy whose name was Dr. John Gerald Taylor. And he wrote a book. And the purpose of his book, he was a skeptic. He didn't believe in ghosts. So he decided to research it, and he wrote a book. And the book was so powerful, I don't know about him, but the book convinced people more than ever that there are ghosts. So his purpose was to refute it, but ultimately it solidified people's belief in it. Now, can there be people that come back to life? And the answer is yes. Now, we're not going to get into a whole thing on reincarnation today. Maybe we'll do that next week. But people say, oh, I saw a ghost, or I saw the vision of someone. That is a possibility in Judaism. You can see someone that was alive, and then you say, oh, I saw that person. Is it a vision? Now, is it that you're literally seeing them, or is it an illusion of them? Each person can decide. There was a rabbi in Jerusalem. His name was Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld. He passed away in 1948, I believe. 1948. He was the chief rabbi of Jerusalem, very well-known and respected rabbi. And he told a story, an incredible story, that there was a banker in his town in Hungary, came from Hungary, and there was a banker. And one day, he was approached by the mother of this banker and said, can you please do me a favor? I would like somebody to say Kaddish for this and this person. He wrote down the name, and she gave them a very, very large check. He goes to the bank, and the bank said, we can't cash this check to some yeshiva student. We need permission from it's a very large. The banker, the head of the bank comes out and says, where did you get this check? He says, this woman gave it to us. He said, no, she didn't. He says, yes. He says, describe me the woman. He described it. And the guy started to cry. It was his mother. And he was not a religious person, but on his deathbed, on her deathbed, he promised, he swore to her that he would say Kaddish. He never did. And she came back. Now, this guy was not a dreamer. We're talking about a very respected rabbi, not talking about some guy that likes to play the guitar in the streets and with a sign, your end is coming. This is a very prominent rabbi, and he documented the story. He said the story. So there can be cases of people that come back to life. There can be such a thing. And so again, ghosts and things of that nature in Judaism. Now again, it's very rare, and people should not walk around, assuming that you saw ghosts and assuming that you saw this. Is not an everyday occurrence. But to dismiss it and say it doesn't happen, that is not true. Okay. The next topic is ET, extraterrestrials. What does Judaism hold about forces that are not in this world? Does anybody want to ask something before we go on? Okay. Now, there's something which are called UFOs, unidentified flying object. It's very fascinating. I've gone, when Gitti's not around, of course, to websites of UFOs, and I like looking at them, and I'm fascinated, and I enjoy them. What is, first of all, forget about Judaism, what does a scientist say about UFOs? 90% of UFOs are either weather balloons, flares, or aircrafts. That's 90% of all UFOs. There are certain ones that are not explained, but it doesn't mean that we don't have an explanation. It just means that we don't know the explanation, not that there is. Is there aliens coming to visit Earth. There's been, no matter how much people want to say that they've seen sightings, that, so far there's not been anything more evidence. And in fact, just the opposite, as I mentioned, I think in Shul, that you would think today that everybody goes around with a cell phone and everybody is carrying a camera, there would be more UFO sightings than ever before. But just the opposite is true. There are less UFO sightings, even though everybody's walking around with cameras. Now, does that mean that there isn't life in outer space? But I have two questions about UFOs that have always bothered me when I read, and I'm talking about people that are genuine, not talking about people that have agendas, but there's two issues that I have with UFOs. The first one is that in their mind, they're aliens that are coming on a flying saucer. That's a UFO. Well, the fact is that if they are aliens, they don't need a flying saucer. Flying saucers for humans. Humans can't fly. So we have a flying saucer. Second of all, if they are flying to Earth, why wouldn't they fly in the same way that humans fly, which is by rocket ship or an airplane? You can't take a flying saucer anywhere. You're not going to get too far. So why would aliens come with a flying saucer? That's one question I've always had regarding UFOs. The second question is, and this is written very serious scientists, people of great intelligence, right? There's a major reason why we don't believe in UFOs, and that is because why haven't they contacted us? If there is life in other, why haven't they made an attempt to contact us? And I'm thinking about that, and I'm saying, wait a second. What do you mean? Maybe they can. Can you imagine? Why would that exclude life? We haven't contacted anybody. So maybe UFOs think that there's no life on Earth because we haven't contacted them. In 1900, there was something called the Prize Guzman at the French Academy of Science, and they offered a prize. They offered a reward of 100,000 francs to the first one that can communicate with anything that is out of this world. And it's yet to be claimed. This was in 1900. Now, there is a guy that flew in the Apollo 11 that claims that he got some of the reward. Now, I don't know if that means that he found the UFOs, he didn't found it, whatever it should be, but that's what they claim. So I just found it fascinating. Let's say there's elephants on another planet. They're supposed to call us? They say, hi, I'm calling from planet X. I'm 500 billion miles away. I'd like to make peace with it. It's shocking how an intelligent person should actually think like that. Like, well, if there was life on another planet, they should have communicated with us. Why? Why should they communicate? So what does Judaism have to say about life on other planets and extraterrestrials and all these things? There's nothing in Judaism that would imply that there cannot be life on other planets. There's nothing. So can there be life? What is life? Plants are life. Water is life. Trees are life. Animals are life. So can there be life on other planets? Definitely can be. Is there? Nobody knows. But there is one thing that it seems from Judaism, and that is that there is not humans on other planets. So life on other planets, there's a possibility. Humans on other planets, it does not seem that according to Judaism, there is humans on other planets, because humans were put into this earth. So you'll say, oh, does that mean that they're aliens? What's an alien? How do you describe an alien? What's an alien? It's a figment of people's imaginations, the way they picture it from movies or whatever. That's how they imagine things, right? Nobody comes up with something original from ETs or anything. It's always the same flying saucer. That's this. It's an alien. There's no evidence of that, but there is possibility of life even in Mars. Scientists believe that there are some type of life because they found some kind of water over there. I don't know if it's water the way we have water, but they did find something. And in fact, when the French made this prize for 100,000 francs to communicate, they said it does not include if you find life on Mars. That's considered too easy. So Mars was not included in in this equation. So again, can there be an ET? In theory, yes. Can there be life on other planets or other galaxies? The answer is there's a possibility. Now, personally, I don't believe there's any living beings like animals or walking. Like what purpose would there be? We have a purpose. We were put into this world. We were given a Torah to make God a dwelling place. What purpose? Animals are there to help us, right? If we have to travel the desert, so God had camels. Camels are there to help us. They serve a purpose. I think I told the story about this baby camel and its mother. And they're sitting there, and the baby camel turns to his mother and he says, "Mama," he says, "yes, why do we have humps on our back?" He says, "because we are traveling for great distances in the desert. And when we travel, we need to store our water." He says, "Oh." He says, "Mama, why do we have such strong feet?" He says, "because we're going through the heat of deserts and climbing rocks, so we have that." He says, "and why do we have such strong fur?" He says, "because the wind blows to us and it serves as a protection for the harsh environments." He says, "Mama, I just have one more question." He says, "yes." He said, "what are we doing in the zoo?" So, animals serve a purpose. Water in this world serve a purpose. What purpose would animals have in a planet 500 billion away? So, do I think there's life? Not necessarily human life, but life on other planets? I don't think so. Is there something in Torah that would say it doesn't exist? No, there's nothing. And in fact, my understanding is from certain sources, it implies that there is some type of life on other planets. So somebody comes and visits a planet, comes back and says, "yes, we have found life," which means it could be plants. Plants is life, plant life, right? When a plant dies, you say it died. That means it's alive until it dies. So there can be those types of things in this world. So just to recap, there are, according to Judaism, demons. There are forces in this world. There is such a thing as a Satan, and a lot of it is a temptation to us, as well as to carry out God's plan, whatever it should be. Judaism believes that there's an angel of death. Judaism does believe that there can be ghosts. It doesn't mean that every time that somebody hears a story about a ghost, it means that we believe it. We're not naive. Sometimes people imagine things. People have very good imaginations. Sometimes people have phobias and fears. That doesn't mean that every ghost story is legitimate. But can there be a ghost in Judaism? The answer is yes. So that's a little bit in a nutshell. Somebody have any questions on what we've discussed today? Yes, Lynn.
I thought that Lilith was Adam's first wife. That's what I was.
Yeah, according to many, well, it doesn't say it explicitly in the Bible that Lilith was his wife,
Right.
but according to sources that it was his first wife, yes.
Because you said she wanted to be.
No, he rejected her. So she wanted to stay with him.
Okay.
So that's why we have temptations. That's the official version.
Yeah.
The different.
Did she have children and they were demons?
So it says that Adam and Eve separated for a long time. Because when Adam's son murdered his brother, imagine, like, that's called nachas, right? You have two kids, one is murdered and one's a murderer. So Adam and Eve were reluctant to have more children. Well, human nature is that you do need to have children. So Adam's seed was spilled because he didn't want to have children. And that seed created demons. Lilith took it, or whatever it was, she took it for herself and she made demons out of it. That's one of the versions that are. Again, it's midrashic material. It doesn't mean that you have to believe that, but that's what it says in certain sources regarding Lilith. There are questions about the afterlife, near-death experiences, reincarnation, heaven and hell. Those are all topics that we're going to explore, God willing, next week. We're going to get to those topics of heaven and hell, reincarnation, and other types of things. Does anybody else want to ask anything or comment before we conclude? Okay. So I hope that you enjoyed today's class. I hope it was informative, and thank you for joining us, for those that are seated on Facebook and those at YouTube and those that are present here. This Saturday, this public service announcement, we are having services. Amy and Bob are sponsoring the Kiddush. Amy's father of blessed memory. We're having a Kiddush to commemorate his yahrzeit, so we ask that people should please come. And we're on for next week, same time, same place, same station. Be well and have a wonderful evening.